can crop a video too, so I don't need to restart it.
Okay, well, you don't need to be mean. This fucking bullshit right here.
On a dark and stormy night, Gerald forgot to bring the tomatoes back from the car after his trip to the supermarket. It totally was a trip. Lots of things happened. Among those things, let's start with the scariest of them all. On his way back, one of his tires went flat, and then the next one and the next one, and he only had one tire left. It sucked. So his entire car stopped working and he was stranded miles and miles from the supermarket and miles from his home. Because of his lack of vehicular transport, he decided he had to lock, and so he met two young lovers who are also walking home from the supermarket with no vehicle. One of which was named Gerald, also the other Tom. Tom and Gerald too had a similarity to Gerald, which was they were just at the supermarket. Gerald and Tom decided that they were going to bring Gerald to their home, which was closer than Gerald's home, and they had a slice of fun pie. So Gerald ended up at Tom and Gerald's apartment, and after apartment he was greeted with a sinister guest. The guest, to Gerald's surprise, was none other than Michael Keaton, dressed as a lion but only from the waist up. Gerald was instantly off-put. He vomited. Luckily close to the door was a sink, so all of his vomit landed in the bottom of the sink. Also, he fucking hates lions and was very scared and nervous and uncomfortable. So Tom, Gerald and Michael Keaton were instantly appalled by Gerald vomiting in their sink and asked him to leave and took back the fun pie. Gerald then realized he was on his own once again, needing a place to go. He tried to contact his parents but realized his phone was a quarter. Looking down at the quarter in his hand, he said to himself, haha, that again, and proceeded to start walking to the nearest payphone in hopes that the cord it would be enough. Plot twist, it's not. So he sat in the payphone for hours, 8 to be exact, until he awoke from his slumber that he didn't even know he was slumbering because there was a scratch on the glass from the outside. Dial as a small boy, Gerald had heard stories of the hash slinging slasher, but not at no point how do you ever actually seen the field. So when he looked up and saw an old woman holding a spatula, his instant reaction was that her student treasure worked very hard to pay off his student loans, but to no avail. He was going to die tomorrow, let me tell you why, said the old woman holding the spatula to Gerald. Gerald did not want to listen to the story, so he opened the door, knocked out the old woman, took his groceries and started to walk home. On his way home he noticed the bag had a rip in the bottom. He didn't mind because the only thing that was falling out was an individual bean every 5 to 7 minutes. Gerald thought to himself that maybe, just maybe, half at least of those beams would someday become bean sprouts and maybe even become their own people with their own lives, stories and aspirations. But they did not in fact become aspirations, they became asparagus. He finally made his way home after the bean debacle, except this was not his home. Gerald noticed that it was not his home when he stepped inside and all of the furniture was glued to the ceiling. For a moment he wondered to himself if this is just another prank, but he could tell from the smell of knobs and chocolate it was not in fact his home, as it was lacking in peppermint. Gerald turned on the lights only to realize that he had come full circle and was back at Gerald and Tom's apartment, only this time for some reason everything was glued to the ceiling after only a few hours. It was obvious it had to have been Michael Keaton. Do you have Douglas tooth feeling in such short notice? He whispered to himself, Michael Keaton, Michael Key, my cookie, and suddenly the mecha watched the Saturday before him holding a lion plushie. Hold on, not only was he holding a lion plushie, he was holding Gerald and Tom's heads, and their bodies were in the sink with the vomit from the beef past hours. Gerald was very disturbed by this sight and instantly regretted calling Michael Keaton's name out loud, but there was nothing to do about it. He had to face his fears, which was lions, Michael Keaton, and things being upside down, by opening up his grocery bag and throwing 7 individually cut tomatoes into Michael Keaton's mouth. Michael Keaton, of course, being allergic to tomatoes, was his Christianly defeat, so Gerald used the dial-up connected phone to contact his parents once and for all, only to find out that they had been dead for 7 years, ironically the same amount of tomato. With tears in his eyes and hatred towards Michael Keaton, tomatoes, things upside down, vomit and other things, lions, specifically, she can try out what was remaining in his bag, put it in another bag and then walk towards his home, hoping this time he did not walk a full circle like last time. He followed various street signs point to him in the direction of a different country, him which he believed to be the one he was born in. Yeah, but I could have. 8 hours later he came to the house that on the door read Gerald's house. He had eaten a half or more of the things in his bag. It only know was it the contents of 3 beans, 1 asparagus and an entire jar of clam juice. He put it down on his counter, sighed deeply and died.
Clam juicy.